Okay, perfect. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us with another segment here on Declaring Independence. Today we have Heidi Briones. There's a multiple number of things we could talk about, from the fact that you put up cold calls on your LinkedIn profile to the fact that you ran for Congress 3 years ago in Portland, and going after the Tate brothers. You're very interesting, actually.
Well, thank you.
And just before we go, the reason why I reached out to you specifically is because when Kynan and I confronted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you were the first big account to actually quote tweet it. I remember it was like, yes, and
I was like, yes, too, because that's like my dream. I have a feed and I have some good people I follow, and with less followers than I do. So when they post something like that, I'm just like, and I see it right away. I was like, oh shit, I saw this right away. I'm like, I'm on this. Yeah. So that was
well,
my dream. I love boosting that type of thing, and I'm so glad I could help get you more eyeballs.
yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that definitely helped, push the snowball down the hill and making it into what it became ultimately. Out of all my tweet impressions, and out of all the interventions, that one still has the highest tweet impressions. It's something like 11 million impressions or so.
It's
Um,
crazy. Yeah, it keeps growing. And like, yeah, I mean, I saw it pop up everywhere, and people, people had posted
yeah,
it. They're like, your tweets on Jimmy Dore, your tweets on this show. I was like, oh, awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's not about me. It's about getting you guys out there and getting the message out there, and, holding these people accountable. So if I can help in any way, and it's just as simple as a tweet, and, just made it a little funny, you gotta put a joke in there to kind of, get people sharing it more. So that's kind of my style. It's like a little spicy, but you could put a joke in there and make it, shareable, then it's great. I just I love when that happens. It was just like the
yeah,
right moment. Yeah.
I totally agree. And so to just kick things off, let's talk about you. You were a Yang Gang person.
Yeah. That's how this whole kind of thing started, Didn't have much of a platform before then, but I was really curious about him as just an anti-establishment figure. I was still on the left at that time, still considered myself a progressive. I no longer do for many reasons, or we could get into that. But yeah, it was an exciting campaign. I thought that he had a lot of energy and a lot of youth energy, which was something I felt was missing. And he was this Gen X kind of candidate that kind of spoke to the millennial generation, which was, interesting to me. And I got behind him, and, the UBI thing was a part of it. I mean, it was, I always thought of it as an interesting theory, and somebody running on that concept was appealing to me. And I just really loved the community that we had at that time. It was fun, it was exciting, there was so much energy behind his campaign. So that's how I went to Twitter. I wasn't active on Twitter at the time, and that's where the Yang Gang was really kind of doing, the best, and having kind of more influence. So they pushed me to go onto Twitter, and I had a different account at the time. I had it was Lesbians for Yang, actually. And that was with me and my wife, and we would just like wear Yang Gang stuff and go around and like canvas and talk about these issues, and talk about it from our perspective of like a young newlywed gay couple, and how something like UBI or something like Andrew's kind of message was resonating with us. And that was what we went on. And then when he dropped out, a lot of people were kind of pushed to run for office. And people were asking, run for office, run for office. I was like, should I run for office? I was like, I don't know. And then I kind of looked into what it took, and I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. And this is February of 2020. So if this was like, April of 2020 or like any time later, I might have said no. But being that I didn't know that we were going into, what became a global pandemic and, emergency, I just went for it. And then I started my personal account, figured out how to get verified, which everybody asked me about for a long time. Now it's $8, but at that time it was a big deal. I got verified really quickly, like in March, and then just kind of went from there, and had a really kind of exciting grassroots campaign against a very strong incumbent that was very hard to overcome. But it did have that sort of AOC type of feel to it, with the Yang Gang. They were kind of like looking at me as that sort of figure to come through as like a millennial candidate that gets it, that has experienced everything they've experienced, from economic recessions to war to loss of civil liberties. and really kind of spoke to those messages, and, kind of a Tulsi vibe too. I got the Aloha gang behind me, and it was fun. It was great. And I think I did great for a first time candidate, like I think like 8,000 votes. I beat out the other two competitors who had been in the race for a year or more and had run multiple times. And I did it all online because it was the middle of the pandemic. So my style is definitely more in person, knock on doors, that type of thing. But we had to do it all online and have a fully online grassroots campaign, which was super fun. And then I had a platform, which, it makes me basically excited that I can now, talk about other things that are important. And, even though it's morphed into something different, I think that that's great. And even though I'm just a regular person who, works a regular job and cold calls and does other types of things, unrelated to politics, it's just nice being able to help spread, the message of like truth, liberty, anti-war message, women's rights, things that the left has abandoned rapidly, and it led me to abandon them.
Well, let's get into that, because you
Yeah.
said you kind of had like a falling out with the left. What
Oh,
caused
yeah.
you to have that fallout?
It started with Biden because I'm against Biden. I mean, I figured in my mind, like most people that were progressive or that were for somebody like Andrew Yang, would also be against Biden. I mean, because he's the establishment, like he's the swamp. Has a horrible record of policies for years and years. And I have a personal, vindication, I guess, against him because he outlawed raves, and I was a big raver in the early 2000s. And he tried to pass the Rave Act and some other laws that got passed, got pushed into other bills, and he pushed them through. And he was, basically responsible for some just horrible censorship, shutting down these really positive, experiences that young people were having at the time, and saying that it was dangerous for people to meet up together and listen to music. Like just ridiculous policies, not to mention like his racist policies and his anti-war policies. I mean, his pro-war policies rather, and everything else that he's done in his career. So I was against him. They didn't like that. They thought, they're typical Democrats. Not everybody in the Yang gang, but a grand majority were Democrats that vote party line. You vote for the nominee. I'm not like that. I don't know why they thought I would be like that. I mean, I guess maybe I left that impression, but could be my fault. But I just started coming out against Biden, and they really hated that. And then I lost a lot of people there. And then I was like, all right, well, you know what? I guess I'm definitely not, with this progressive movement anymore. And I'm not sure if I want to be a Democrat anymore. I guess I'll just deregister as a Democrat. And then, I really just went on a journey because I'm like, this is not the only problem that progressives and the left have had. I mean, they have abandoned women's rights, and pushed radical gender ideology and, the erasure of women as, a protected class. And I'm fully against that as well. They're still pushing pro-war messages, and literally, funding of wars and proxy wars. So for all of these reasons, I feel like there's no way for me to be principled and to stand with the Democratic Party or the left, because I haven't changed. They have. I've always been pro civil liberties. I was in Students Against War at UC Santa Cruz. We kicked military recruiters off campus multiple times through direct action. And it was a big deal. It got national press at the time. I started a chapter of the ACLU back when they were still pro civil liberties at UC Santa Cruz as well. And I don't feel like I've changed. I would still, in the same circumstances, do all of those things again. And they've changed, like I feel like now the left is focused on the wrong things, and they're not doing the work that they should be doing. And they're, basically becoming regressive. And when the progressives become regressive, sorry, I leave. And I go another direction because I can't associate with that. So I feel like I'm just a principled, like civil libertarian who's actually fairly moderate. And I'm not going to go against those principles for party or, cult or otherwise. So I was ridiculed. I was attacked. I was basically canceled, if you will. I don't really believe that's a real thing anymore, but it hurt, and it took a while for me to kind of get over losing all of my so-called friends, comrades, if you will, colleagues, and otherwise. I basically deactivated my Twitter for I think 9 months just to deal with it mentally. And then I came back and I was like, screw it. You know what? I still have a platform. I still have things to say and I still have a message to get through, and I'm going to find other people who resonate with it if it's not this group of people anymore.
Wow, that's quite that very resonates with the mission of our channel, which is called Declaring Independence. Because after him and I confronted AOC, she said we're right-wing cultists. But what you said about how I didn't change, they did, is exactly the way I felt. With the Ukraine proxy war, and even before, I meant what I said. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against.
Right. And it's so disappointing, right? When you have somebody like an AOC who's supposed to be, the first real millennial politician coming in, with supposedly great ideas and, beating an establishment candidate and supposed to be fighting, for against these people, and then gets a little bit of taste of, the fame of being in Washington and some of the money, and, likes the parties and likes having, an Instagram or whatever else, and becomes this kind of whatever celebrity politician thing. And it's like, that's not your job. And we don't care, and you don't get a pass now because, you're AOC. Like I mean, it was exciting, to like see her at first. And I liked her a lot at the time. It was very, you relate to her, you relate to like her story and like the message she was pushing, because we're in that generation. We went through all this, we know like how things aren't what we were promised, and, how we deserve more and we deserve better. But she's just doing the same things that they're all doing. And that's just sad and pathetic. And we need to call it out when anybody does that. And you can call me right wing if you want. I really don't care. I mean, it's just other words. They just make up new words constantly to like try to, whatever, like to say that they'll say you're right wing. They'll say you're fascist. They'll say you're turf. They'll call me a turf. They'll call me all these terms. And I'm like, I don't really care, because I know your games. I was on the left my whole life. Like, I know what you're doing. I used to do the same thing. I was in that cult. When you leave a cult, they try to discredit members that have left the cult and say it's them. Look at Scientology or any other cult, and they will discredit you if you go against the cult and leave and try to destroy your life. And I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm only 21, so I haven't been politically active, for a long part of my life. But it's been interesting talking to people like you, like Jimmy, because when we were talking to Jimmy, because he kind of comes from the same crowd, he was on the Young Turks. He came from this sort of progressive mindset, and people like AOC and Bernie, they actually represented hope. They represented change, right? And then comes 2016, we find out about this so-called hack, right? This hack on the DNC, which was really a leak, as we now know. And they refused to talk about the fact that the DNC had purposely sabotaged Bernie's campaign. And Bernie's response to that was not to go after them, but to stand behind Hillary, to stand behind the people that sabotaged him. So he totally sold out his people. AOC's doing the same thing right now.
They all are, with Ukraine. I mean, who's standing up, against Ukraine? So yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, but I think so. Once Bernie lost, and since now we're seeing a lot of people who are disillusioned and are seeing him for the phony that he is.
Yeah.
Because some of the people are pessimistic, right? So I think it's up to us who have the ability to create independent platforms right now. To really orient people, because the people need to take charge of this and to stand up for what's right.
100%. That's why I love the type of work that you guys are doing. And I'm glad that you're continuing on, and, putting your real names and faces out there is not easy. It takes more than bravery. You have to understand the repercussions and, know that like there could be consequences for what you're doing, both, career wise, money wise, physically. Like there's so many things that come with that. And it shouldn't be that way. This is America and we should have free speech. And the fact that, you have people coming at you and you feel more at home possibly on the other side where you never would have felt that way before, and they're actually letting you speak. I mean, I talk to leftists all the time. I mean, there's, Kay Yang in New York City. She told me, she's like, I only can go on like Fox News and these like right-wing places. And a lot of them feel that way. Tulsi Gabbard, is now a contributor in Fox News. And I'm sure she never, anticipated that a few years back.
Right.
But it's, what are you going to do? You need to have a platform and a voice, and whoever will speak to you and let you speak, whether you agree with them or not, on other things, you go there and you speak and you share your truth.
Exactly. And I'm sure it must have been, that period you described of leaving the lab was very difficult. Your wife sounds like a really great person for staying with you, because I know that that kind of transformation in identity and politics can be very rocky in a relationship. So,
Yeah, she's not super political. She's just very supportive. So like
okay.
when we were doing that, she just supported me really. Like she's like, "Oh, you like Andrew Yang? Let me check him out. I like Andrew Yang." She's just very like cool like that. She's never been super political. She's actually, a bit more conservative than, I would be. She grew up kind of similar to me though, in a conservative family and has conservative traditional kind of values, but I mean, she's definitely anti-establishment and has, like the libertarian streak. So it didn't strain us too much. What really strained us was just me running for office and how stressful it was, because I was
Mm.
working a full-time job and all of that. And then she also doesn't like when, people come at me and attack me and then I get down about it or I get angry about it, and then she's like, well, that sucks. It's like ruining your mood. So she doesn't love Twitter. Let's put it that way. She doesn't love Twitter and she doesn't always love that, but she's come around and realized like what I'm doing, like just by listening to my stuff. And she doesn't like to listen to all of it. It's too heavy for her. But when she does take the time to listen to some of my stuff, she's like, yeah, I'm really proud of what you're doing. And I see why you're doing it and that you have, a reason to, and you feel like this is like your, your duty and to serve in the way that you can in this little arena that you have, and you want to grow it and, spread positive messages. And I love it. Yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, kind of staying on a similar topic, you're a lesbian, you're proud of it, you're very open about it. And also you're in Portland, Oregon, which is like a
Yep.
champion city of LGBTQ rights.
You'd think, yeah.
Can you kind of give us an insight more into the transformation the LGBTQ community has gone through in the last 10 years? Because,
Yeah.
I was, I guess, 14 years old when Obama legalized gay marriage. And now here we are in 2023, and Matt Walsh came out with that documentary, What is a Woman? And so now it's become, whoa, the LGBT movement is actually about child mutilation. It's like,
Right.
so can you kind of give me a little bit
Yeah,
of,
sure. I'd love to speak to that. I mean, I think I found an old essay that I had written recently in some old files, and I was talking about how, so this was, so how gay marriage was legalized. It wasn't Obama exactly. It was Prop 8 was passed in California, basically defining marriage was between a man and a woman. And I was in California at the time. I was obviously against that, and it passed. And it was kind of sad, but we knew that it would go up to the Supreme Court, and there's no way that kind of thing would stand. That was just the thought, and it went to the Supreme Court, and yeah, it became the law of the land. But when I was growing up, first I was in the closet, and I had took a while for me to really come to terms with whether I was like gay or bisexual or what actually, I wanted to do with my life and who I wanted to be. And when I felt confident enough, then, I did come out, and I was, fairly out to friends and casually, but not fully out to my family or at work or, other situations like that. And the scene really, like, I think early 2000s was really actually pretty great for young gays and lesbians. I mean, it wasn't, promoted everywhere, but we didn't want it to be. I mean, frankly, like it's more, fun and safe for us if we had our own safe spaces. We had lesbian bars everywhere. There was, you know, tons of bars in Portland that have now been closed. There's, a famous bar called the Lex in San Francisco and the Castro that was closed. And these places started, shutting down at some point. And I realized, well, what is actually going on here? And this was all sort of leading up to, gay marriage finally, becoming the law of the land in 2015, I believe. And this was really the heyday, which is what kind of what my little essay was about, was that like it was okay that we didn't have gay marriage actually, because what we did have was we had actual community. We had like actual people that cared about each other. We had actual safe spaces. We actually had parties and events that could be same sex. We actually didn't get a lot of, publicity and corporatization quite yet. It was kind of starting, but it was a great time actually. And we had acceptance, we had general like social acceptance. People didn't really care that much anymore. You know, they realized, hey, this isn't cool to be that way with like, you know, gay people. There wasn't, the gay bashing thing was not cool anymore. And like all of this stuff, you know, calling people, you know, dyke, fag, all this, I was like, that's horrible stuff now. And we all accepted that. But then what happened was, you know, the left gets a hold of any issues that they can to push other things. And what they did is they took a hold of our community and are using it for their own, you know, purposes and gain. So what I think is my theory, and some of it can be proven through looking at financial records, is that after gay marriage was no longer an issue to raise money, they had to move on to something else, right? And the trans issue had been something they had been trying to get in for a long time. And it was like, first it was transsexuals back in the 90s. It was like, oh, are they part of our kind of group and community or not? And we're like, yeah, I mean, they don't have anywhere else to go. And we accept people as who they are. And it's a very small percentage of people. It's maybe 1% of people that actually identify as trans. Sure. I mean, they can hang out with us. They don't have another safe space to go. We're a safe space for them. And then after 2015, there was a massive push. There was even, I think, like a trans protest on the Supreme Court steps on the day that it passed. That it was a trans rights just a demonstration, and there was a bunch of trans rights people there. And I was like, this is interesting. Like, what is this? I had never seen the trans flag. I didn't know there was a trans flag. I didn't know this was a major issue. I thought this was, you know, a side issue. And then suddenly money starts flooding in for trans rights, and suddenly, you know, trans women are women, and there's this intersectionality thing that the left starts doing with gays and lesbians, when before, you know, they basically used us as a tool to like further an agenda, is how I feel. And what I feel is going on is, you know, a lot of this is conversion therapy that we wouldn't have put up with in the 90s or early 2000s. If you have a gender nonconforming child, lots of them turn out to be gay. Some estimates and some studies have been done that show that 80% of gender nonconforming little girls are gay or bisexual when they grow up. And so you're transing gay youth and mutilating gay youth and eliminating gays and lesbians, and really destroying our community. Because you can't, if let's say I'm a gender nonconforming little girl and today, and I had some woke parents and they decided, oh, yeah, you're actually a boy. You're going to be whatever, Harry or whatever, you know, and you're going to be a boy. Okay, well then I'm no longer a lesbian anymore, and that's not that's not a thing that exists. And that's how you destroy like really a community, is by starting younger and making it political when it's not actually political. Like who you're attracted to isn't actually political. So, you know, the left really clung on to gay people and said, we support you. They don't, they're evil. We love you. Now you're with us, you're in our cult. And then moved onto the trans issue once it was convenient for them and more profitable. I mean, trans rights are incredibly profitable, so much more profitable than gay rights. How much money can you raise from that, and what can you do with that? But when you have somebody, you can create a medical patient for life. You know, you can really basically like trans anybody you want. I mean, now you could be non-binary. I think it's like 20% they said of Gen Z identifies as trans or non-binary. I mean, that's not a real thing, but they want to build like a large of coalition of young people as they possibly can to push whatever agenda they have.
That's awfully not progressive of you.
It's regressive. It's very, very regressive, because you're saying if you don't conform to gender, then you're the other sex. Wait, what? That's not progressive. Like progressive, like to me was always like, you can be whatever you want. I don't care. You can be a man in a dress. Good for you. Congratulations. High five. You look great. But you're not a woman. You know, that's a different thing. That's a protected class. Like, well, that's a protected sex class. And to think, oh, women aren't a protected sex class anymore. Like, are you freaking kidding me? They've removed like RAINN is a group that basically does studies on sexual assaults and rape and human trafficking and other things. And they removed the sex trait basically from their studies. So they don't tell you how many rapes or sexual assaults are committed by males versus females anymore. They just completely removed that statistic. Yeah. So you don't even have those numbers anymore. We don't have data. They've erased data and facts and science. So now we can't even say like, yeah, 90% of sexual assaults are committed by male individuals. Doesn't matter if they're trans or not. That's just a fact. That's just a reality. I mean, who doesn't know that? Like any man that I talk to is like, yeah, I mean, men are dangerous, obviously. Like if I'm walking down an alleyway and there's a big, dude, like that's more scary to me than like, a small female. Obviously, that's just a fact of life. I mean, men are bigger and stronger and have the tendency to like, be violent towards, weaker people if they're, have those character traits, if they have those dark triad character traits, or they're, that is something we've all always known. And now we're supposed to just forget about it. Like that's not a reality, that women need safe spaces. It's ludicrous to me.
Yeah, it is. Well, this is all interesting that you've laid out, but no, it is ludicrous. And, the agenda that they're trying to push, oh, we're progressive, we're with the woke crowd, it's, as you said, regressive. It's ironically creating a more threatening environment for women such as yourself when you're kind of, destroying any lines, you're destroying sex as a whole. And, sex is a fact. I think we have to realize that, but we also can accept people for who they are. We don't, need to assault people. But the thing I'm worried about is just with the whole identity politics thing, it's really creating a sense of fear, and I know you were talking about this as well with, your work in the ACLU and civil liberties, and how we really see that going down the drain, with the Restrict Act, people can't say what they think anymore, and you create all these different divisions, trans, non-binary, whatever. I don't know all the terms, it's hard to keep track of all of them, but
no one does. Yeah, they keep up with one every day.
Yeah, but people are put more and more into their own bubble, and are divided against these other people. So you're fragmenting society, I think.
Sure, definitely, it's divisive, but they're also playing the game of trying to get more people on their team too, by making it broader, and like you can, I mean, they're expanding it too in a way. Like the whole queer thing is like, oh, I'm polyamorous, so I'm queer, so now I'm part of LGBTQIA plus whatever the heck, just because I have like 2 partners or something. And it's like, okay,
Right.
like what does that mean? No one cares, like no one
Right.
cares like what you do like outside of whatever else. Like that's irrelevant. Like we care about your principles, what you stand for, your values, who you are as a person, and your character, and we don't care who you sleep with. Like that's totally irrelevant as long as you're not harming anyone. Go for it. And that's was the kind of left perspective in the 90s and early 2000s, and now it's very authoritarian. Like, you either think the way I think or you're out, and it's just like that's not anything I can get down with. I mean, probably Jimmy Dore's the only big leftist that I could still even agree with. I mean, I don't fuck with anybody but the anti-war left, first of all, so there's hardly anybody left as far as that goes. And if you don't support women's rights, then you lose a lot of credibility to me if you're willing to erase women. Like what is that about, either as a woman or a man?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And, there's been a rise now where I think teenagers, and they classify teenagers between 12 and 19. There's been a 5,000% increase in teenagers who are reporting to be transgender or identify as trans. I also produce a show for Senator Richard Black. He's a former state senator. And he's like ultra right-wing conservative. We had him on the show before. We mentioned Cuba once, and then he went on like a 30-minute tirade about like Cuba's the worst place to go to in the world. And like that wasn't even the topic. We were talking about Ukraine. Okay, just to give you a sense of how much this guy does not like communism or socialism or whatever. But he does these shows because he's in Loudoun County, Virginia. Right. And there's like a big fight over there with the school boards as to whether or not they're going to include some material that can be seen as like pornographic for children or not. And there's been talk of teaching like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, what a blowjob is, what different kinds of sexual acts are. One, I don't exactly know how exaggerated or true that is or not. I don't know if you have more insight into that, because like everybody says something different. I know Barack Obama hilariously put out this letter a couple of days ago saying like some of the books that I grew up with, and that shaped me, are now being threatened to be banned from the school curriculum system. And then like all the conservatives started posting like screenshots of like from the books. It's like, oh really? is this what shaped your childhood? And it's like a dude sucking off another dude.
Maybe it is, I mean, no, but yeah, but there's
Yeah.
different rumors there. That's a different rabbit hole. But yeah, yeah, go ahead. Did you have a
No,
question?
I would just say like what you're doing is you're completely destroying the identity of a child and of a teenager as a human being, as before anything else, right?
Oh yeah.
When you reduce somebody just to their sex and just to their orientation, I mean, whatever happened to telling a child, you're perfect the way you are?
Right.
And it's so
Yeah.
funny because there was this guy who makes these comics, and he made exactly that comic. It was a mom and a child walking down the street, and then on the window it says, children gender reassignment surgery. And then the next frame is the mother kneeling down to the kid after the kid's like, I want to do that. After the kid says that, the mother gets on one knee, looks at the kid and says, you're perfect the way you are.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's what parenting is. That's what you should do, and you should protect the innocence of children. I mean, that seems so basic to say, you should protect their innocence as long as possible. Someone's gonna mess it up one day, don't let it be you, and don't let it be, teachers or other people that you can, easily, keep them away from, or, protect them from. So yeah, I think that it's weird. I mean, it's odd being like a gay person who had zero of that in school, even in the public school system. And, in a way, I could kind of see their point in a way, because like as a young gay person, if there was just some, I mean, nothing sexual, but if there was just some like role models for me growing up that were gay and had like a good life and stuff, that would have made me feel a lot better about, who I was. But that's more like, just, oh, it's okay to like have a girlfriend instead of a boyfriend. But wouldn't need to know anything like sexual about that, what that meant. I didn't know anything about, I wasn't thinking about that anyway. It was just like romantic or having a crush. And, I thought, okay, it's not okay to have a crush on a girl. It's okay to have a crush on a boy. That's just how society is. So it'd be good to know that's fine, just in general, or have positive role models that are gay. But there should absolutely be, no talk of sex in any public school. For sure, that's something that, parents should be able to handle on their own, and parental rights are very important. And there's not, I mean, I don't think it's banning books. I am like on the libertarian side now, and some of them are like, think it's book banning, but I don't think it's banning books to, not show porn to kids. Like, I think that's, and to say how much of it is real or not, it's hard for me. I'm not a parent, I'm not involved, but I do know parents, and they do say that there are some very disturbing things that their kids have gotten in Oregon and Portland. Assignments about sexuality, like, oh, this person likes this person. Are they gay or bisexual? Like, what? How is that an assignment? Like, they don't need to know this vocabulary. That's not real. That's not anything they need to know. So what they're doing is they're basically raising young activists. They want like an army. My friend Carlin Borisenko says an army of they thems. They're trying to build this like army of people that, where they say, oh, we're the only ones that support you, now do our bidding in the future. And so they want to get them as young as possible. They're not teaching reading in school. Kids can't read. They're not teaching math. What are they teaching them? Like, I don't know. They're just like what is going on in these schools? They're just teaching them about sexuality, and they're just teaching them about activism. They're basically just raising like activists that are sterilizing themselves and are just going to have no purpose in life, because if you are sterilized, you're not going to have family, obviously. What else are you going to do with your life? Oh, I'm an activist now, I guess. And I'm an activist on this side because they're the ones that support me, and everyone else hates me, is what they tell them. So I think that it's disturbing, and they've been trying to do this for a while. It started in the colleges. They've been trying to get into public schools for a while. And I think they saw this LGBT thing as people being compassionate towards gay people as an opening to go right in, because that parent doesn't want to seem like a homophobe, transphobe, whatever the heck you want to call it, by denying their kid's identity. So now they're just affirming everything. And it's just like, oh yes, little Johnny is now Jane. And I'm not a right winger. So I obviously affirm them, and I love them, and I'm going to support them through that. And it's like, that's not what parenting is. Like, parenting isn't affirming every delusion that your child has. And it's never been about that. It's about telling them no. And it's not about being their friend and affirming them. It's about telling them what's right and wrong, and teaching them something so they have some values when they get out into the world and people are pushing things on them. Then they'll know what's right or wrong. But now parents are going along with it and, supporting it and allowing for it. It's mind boggling.
Heidi, well, we did have a very prominent leader who was LGBTQ recently. He was actually our vice president, Mike Pence.
Right? I know, right? There's probably more of them. I don't know. People say things about Obama too. You never know. So see.
Right? Well, also that Kevin McCarthy is secretly in the closet because it's famously known he lived with a Republican pollster. I forget the guy's name. And when asked about it, and when asked about it, he said, "Oh, I just want to make sure he took his medicine." Yeah, that's why you move in, right?
Sure, yeah. That's always how it used to be. I mean, it used to be normal to be closeted and you had your friend or your their friends, that's how it is. They live together because they're best buds and sure. And everybody's just quiet about it. And that was kind of how it was. But and then you have it becoming very open and out in the open. And I don't really like it, to be honest. I don't want to be associated with, dudes waving around their, dicks in front of kids and stuff. That's not something that like has anything to do with how I live my life. Most gay people just live very normal, boring lives and do everything the same as anybody else does. They just happen to live with a partner of the same sex. And that's about it. And there's nothing, and they have a wide range of interests, and them publicizing and like making it so like out in the streets with it is just wild to me. So yeah, we'll see. But I mean, I think that we've gone full circle. And I think that what both the left and the right are doing, could be looked at as homophobic still. I mean, so everybody has, I think, some homophobia like ingrained in them because it is like unnatural in a way. And it's not, something that, makes sense to a lot of people mentally, which is good. I mean, for the survival of humanity, like I want most people to be straight. And I think, that's fine and great. And I think people should have as many babies as possible. But, basically like it's become okay for the left to be homophobic if it's in the name of trans rights. And then it's become okay now for the right to be homophobic again. For a while, they were pretty accepting. And now they're like this evangelical side of the right is coming out in full force because of what the left is doing. So they feel like they have to react, and they're becoming fully reactionary again, playing into their game. Started, chaos basically, which is what the left wants. I mean, I think is chaos so that they can push an agenda forward and be like, look how crazy these right wingers are. See, they do hate gay people. See, we pushed them so far that now they hate us. It's like, well, yeah, you were waving your dick in front of their kid. Like, I mean, they're not gonna like that, like it's like, come on.
You had something?
Well, I was actually gonna reference one thing that a friend had told me. I think it may have been the state of Oregon or somewhere else in the country, but somewhat law was upheld, which basically made it so that it was okay because, you have a lot of students in schools who are confused about their gender, have gender dysphoria, and they talk to their counselors about it, right? And their counselors advise them, this is totally okay. This is totally normal to have. But it was mandated so that it was okay for the counselors not to advise the parents that their kids had basically felt this way, because the parents, they might not be supportive of their kids, so it's just, it's wild that this is really happening. And I think you're right. We have to view people as human beings. And I think what you said about just saying, you're okay the way you are. You don't have to go through this kind of transformation to be someone that you're not. I mean, why not do that again? Isn't that progressive?
But it's also kind of like a tightrope walk. Like if your 14, 15, 16-year-old kid comes to you and says, Dad or Mom, I feel like I might be gay, right? You don't want to immediately reject them. And I'm not saying you shouldn't accept it or anything. It's like, what do you do there?
Yeah.
I really wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, I think you need to, tell them that that's okay to have feelings, and they should take their time and make, a decision when they're ready, and, and just, and then be like, whatever, go get some ice cream or something. And we don't have to talk about it until it's a real issue, like, cause like I didn't come out till my parents until I was going to get married, like to my grandparents. Like they're very conservative. So like, I didn't really fully come out to my whole family until I was about to get married, because to me, otherwise you're just talking about sex with grandma. Like that's not, you know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I don't want to tell you like about my sexuality. Like it's weird until it's like real, until it's a relationship and it's love and it's somebody I want to be with and it's part of my life and I want you to meet them, then it becomes different, and then it immediately switches, So if you're telling, your parents about your sexuality, I'm bisexual when you're 16, they're like, okay, I mean, I don't know. What do I do with that information? But if you tell them, oh no, I have this person that I love, let me introduce you to them, that, let me know what you think about them. I want to spend more time with them. What do how you feel about it? They're a nice person and they like them. And, that's a different conversation, because what it comes down to is really love and, relationships and family, but they've made it about sex. And it's very disturbing.
Right.
And it was never supposed to be about sex. It's always love is love. It's always, accept people
Right.
for who they love. But now it's like accept people for who they, I don't know, have sex with in the middle of the street, on a, like in broad daylight. It's like, no, I don't, like kink and all this other sexual stuff, like shouldn't be involved in anything to do with this. It certainly shouldn't be public, and it never was. And I feel like they're just trying to push to get reactions and to get like the right to like kind of go more of that like evangelical social conservative way, because the right went very populist and they've been hard to fight. When the right goes more populist and goes more anti-war, more pro-America, starts, having this type of message, like more of the Trump message is more populist and not this like evangelical thing, right? And they became harder to fight. So they're trying to push the right more back into that social conservative realm, where more people can be like, yeah, I don't like that. They're homophobic, And you see it. You see like more right-wing, influencers coming up that are anti-woman, anti-gay, and getting more and more approval. And they're like, yeah, see, because we don't like this kind of perversion stuff, And that's like, okay, well, this is all just like a big distraction. This is just like, this is all a big distraction from real issues that we could be focused on.
So let's take the last 5 minutes here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Portland as a whole, or Oregon, really. I hear that it's terrible over there. I've seen videos of people just walking around, and you see people who are just folded over, overdosing, or just,
Yeah.
You have like total tent cities and shelter cities. And despite the fact that there's so much money put into preventing homelessness and fixing homelessness, there's nothing actually happening. Can you give us like an on the ground report of like what's actually going on?
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse, probably daily. Sometimes it feels like, I mean, I can literally count the amount of tents and cars and RVs like just down the street right here. And it actually says no RV parking, and there's like 2 broken down RVs parked there. They don't care. It's just become a free for all. Do drugs on the street. You can see people shooting up anywhere. I remember when I first arrived here like 5 years ago, I saw somebody doing a drug deal right on the corner of like, it's obviously heroin or fentanyl or something. And they're just like, oh yeah, and here's needle and this and that. And people are just going to work, like riding the train. And we're like, oh, this is fine. Like, how is this like acceptable? So the vibe in Portland is very like relaxed, chill, kind of how you would expect, but also like passive aggressive. We don't say how we feel about things really in public. We just kind of say what we're supposed to say, and we kind of keep quiet and just don't say, if you don't just say anything, we'll just ignore it. We'll just walk over this tent, and just pretend it's okay. It's that kind of a feeling. We're not very aggressive with things. And, you just have old people living here with tents across the street, and they don't call them in. I mean, they could call them in if you make enough calls. If all the neighbors get together, they will make them move the tent city, but the citizens are not pushing for this. They recently just made daytime camping illegal, I think this month. So there's a 4-step process. You get a warning, you get 2 warnings, then you get $100 fine, and then you get 30 days in jail. But I've yet to see if they're enforcing it. They do these things and they don't enforce them. They put the money in and they don't do anything with it. They pay bureaucrats and politicians hundreds of thousands of dollars to do nothing and to not solve the problem. And I mean, if you were getting paid 6 figures to solve homelessness, would you solve it, like in a year and like lose your job, or would you continue stealing money? And they recently had some evidence of homeless funds for homelessness, which has been billions and billions of Oregon taxpayer dollars to homelessness, was being funneled into a nonprofit who just robbed it blind. I think robbed 200 million or something, kind of similar to like a BLM situation, where they're just like, yeah, give me that money and I'll do nothing with it, and I'll buy a house and peace out and like go, to some island or somewhere where you can't extradite me. So yeah, so it's just a real demonstration of the failure of I think left-wing policies in Portland, and just theft, really theft of our tax dollars, theft of our safety, theft of our cleanliness, theft of our lifestyle here and the way Portland's always been, which has been fairly safe, fairly clean. Maybe some bad areas like any city, but now it's almost every street, every city. It's even going out into the suburbs, and people keep having to move further and further away to get away from it. And I don't see them doing anything about it. And I don't think that it would be quite so difficult to resolve. I think there's lots of solutions that we could have. There's lots of work to be done in this city. We could give, homeless people that want to work, which is a good percentage, but don't think they can get a job because of the way they look or otherwise. We could have them do work that needs to be done, like paint graffiti, like we have tons of, walls that are messed up. They could paint walls and feel pride in themselves and get some money. That's where the money should have been going, into improving their lives, into making things better. But instead it goes to politicians who I never see on the street. And you should look up Kevin Dahlgren, I think is his last name, who does work on the streets in Portland. He talks to homeless people and he says, yeah, they all say no one's ever come to talk to me. Not a politician, not a social worker, not a nonprofit. Nobody comes and talks to them like at all. And that's a disgrace because these are human beings that are real, have real lives. And a lot of them would like to improve their situation and deserve some of that funding to go to them. But instead, they just keep flooding in because what it is there's no enforcement. You can camp on the streets. That's what they hear. And they come from other states. You can do drugs anywhere you want, tons of drugs, all kinds of fentanyl here, come on in. And that's really the culture that has been happening. And you see people leaving like crazy. Like look up how many people are selling homes in Portland at the top of the market right now. It's wild. People are, leaving like crazy. So it's bad, it's bad. And I think that we need some, we need like a hard ass to come in and be like, this is not okay anymore. And they don't do it. We have Ted Wheeler, just like AOC and these others, they talk a big game and they do jack all, and they try to get reelected and that's all they care about. They just want to get reelected and get more funding and they're not doing anything. It's all just words. And we let them get away with it though. It's like, it comes down to, the citizens let them get away with it and keep voting for them and keep funding it and don't say anything and just let it go on. And it's sick, it's just sick. These are like human beings dying on the street in front of us, also polluting, everything around us, making things filthy and disgusting and doing drugs in front of kids. And we're just like, yeah, that's cool because we're like progressive and nice here, I guess. And we'll just be compassionate. It's like, that's not compassion. Letting someone die on the sidewalk, is not compassion. That's not what you do. Like if you're a compassionate person, you don't ignore human suffering right in front of your face. You try to do something about it. So yeah, I'm trying to work with Kevin on a few things, at least get his message more out there because he has some pragmatic ideas from working on the streets with these people and actually being out there giving them food and water, doing the real work that these other bureaucrats aren't doing. So we'll see. I hope that we could turn the city around. I think it's turned around before and we could do it again.
Okay, I think that's a great place to end if you have anything else to say.
Oh man, it was awesome. Thanks for letting me speak and giving me, a voice and a platform. And I can't wait to see what you guys are doing. Do you have episodes up already or anything, or it's
Yeah, our
Okay.
most famous one was with Oliver Stone.
Oh wow. What is
and
it?
then-
Is it? Do you have a name of your channel or something, or how can I find it?
It's Declaring Independence.
Okay, awesome. Well, it's so
Yeah.
exciting, and I'll definitely share out some of your stuff and try to get you some more. I don't know if I could do as well as the 11 million.
There's a lot.
That was a moment in time. But if you do have a video that you think is like that can go viral, you can shoot it to me, as soon as
Yeah.
you drop it, and I will definitely try to quote tweet it and get more eyeballs. I'm happy to keep doing.
Yeah,
that.
and can you just plug in your stuff so people can find you on
Oh
our
yeah,
channel?
totally. Yeah, my name's Heidi Briones. You can find me on Twitter. Yeah, HeidiBriones. I also have a Substack. It's just HeidiBriones.com, where I talk about some of these things. I have my podcast on there as well called Keep Portland Free, where I talk about the Portland issues that I was mentioning in more detail. And I write about all kinds of topics like generations, generational theory, liberty in general, the Restrict Act. I have a pretty popular article about the Restrict Act and banning TikTok and why that's a mistake. As somebody who understands what these contrived acronyms really mean and how they're really just, taking away our liberties. So please do check it out and follow me and connect with me. I'd love to connect with any like-minded folks out there.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Sounds good. Okay, well, this has been another episode of Declaring Independence. Thank you, Heidi. Oh, Heidi,
Yeah,
excuse me. Yeah, Heidi,
No, you're
Heidi.
fine. No, it's fine. Yeah, Heidi, it's all good. Thanks, guys.
You.
Super fun.